Rockhopper here, and today I'm going to show you the boyhood home of one of the most famous outlaws in the American West, and the world for that matter. Who do you think that might be? Billy the Kid? Jesse James? I'll give you a hint. He was part of the Wild Bunch. In Beaver, Utah, a baby was born on April 13, 1866, and given the name Robert Leroy Parker. He was the first of 13 children in this Mormon family. His parents had immigrated from England in 1856 and later moved to Circleville, Utah, where they homesteaded a ranch. As a boy, Robert played harmonica, liked and treated animals well, and was a playful brother to his siblings. Young Robert worked on ranches across western Utah. Robert Leroy Parker is a name few people will recognize, but by the time Robert was 18 years old, he had acquired a different name, one known across the globe. I'll tell you what that is in a little bit. By 1884, Robert was rustling cattle. He was dismayed that the large cattle operations were squeezing smaller ranchers out of business and started to be considered something of a Robin Hood. So what's your guess on the famous outlaw? How about Butch Cassidy? Who said Butch Cassidy? You guys got it right. He took the name Cassidy from a rancher and cattle rustler who employed him, named Mike Cassidy, who was his inspiration. He got the name Butch from a stint working as a butcher. Cassidy drifted to Telluride, Colorado, where his first major crime was committed, the robbery of the San Miguel Bank in June of 1889. The robbery was undertaken with Matt Warner and two of the McCarty brothers. They snagged $21,000, then hid out in southwest Utah. Cassidy's favorite hideout was Robber's Roost in southern Utah and Hole in the Wall in Wyoming. In 1894, Cassidy was arrested in Wyoming for stealing horses and sentenced to prison for 2 years, where he served 18 months. When Butch was about 14 years old, he and his family moved here, where he lived until the age of 18. It was a humble abode, a small log cabin within the Parker homestead, too small it would seem for their large family. Come on in, let's check it out. It was sparsely furnished. A small wood stove was used for cooking and provided heat. There were outbuildings such as a small barn and shed, and you can see several farm implements near the house. There were likely a few cows, maybe some sheep, and a goat or two along with a few chickens. There may have been a few fruit trees and a small vegetable garden. So they've been restoring this place. And you can see how they've decorated a bit here. We've got the wash tub over there for washing clothes. And if you look over here, you got the old wood stove and table behind it. And an old bed frame next to that dresser. Apologize if the clarity on the video is not too good. I'm having to shoot this through plexiglass. Cassidy befriended numerous outlaws such as William Ellsworth or Elsie Lay, Harvey Logan, best known as Kid Curry, Ben, the Tall Texan, Kilpatrick, Will News Carver, named as such because he liked reading about himself in the newspaper, and several others such as Bob Meeks. The Wild Bunch was a rotating roster of some of the Wild West's most notorious outlaws. Kid Curry was considered the wildest of the Wild Bunch, having reputedly killed 9 lawmen in 5 shootouts, and additionally 2 others as well. In August of 1896, the Wild Bunch robbed an Idaho bank and hauled off with $7,000. Soon after, Cassidy recruited Harry Longbaugh, best known as the Sundance Kid, into the gang. He got the name Sundance Kid from serving prison time in Sundance, Wyoming. Later, after an elaborate escape, Cassidy went to Helper, Utah, meeting with the gang to plan the heist of $8,800 of the Pleasant Valley Coal Company payroll. In April 1897, the Wild Bunch ambushed a group of men carrying the payroll. Cassidy and the gang robbed the loot by poking a revolver into the gut of the paymaster, who promptly handed it over. They used a relay of fresh horses stashed at intervals along the escape route. In June of 1899, the Wild Bunch robbed a train in Wyoming, and a massive manhunt ensued. The Pinkerton Detective Agency was never far behind. Robberies of trains and banks continued throughout the West, including a $70,000 take of a Rio Grande train in New Mexico. In 1900, the Wild Bunch got a formal picture taken just for fun after a visit to a brothel. When the photographer displayed the photo in his Fort Worth studio window, a Wells Fargo agent recognized the Outlaws, and soon the photo was on wanted posters across the West. The Pinkerton agents got one step closer to catching the gang. In 1901, Cassidy, Sundance Kid, and the kid's girlfriend, Etta Place, sailed to Argentina and bought a ranch. Tired of constantly being on the run, and with the Pinkerton Agency always on their trail, they thought they could start a new life in South America and find some peace. But when a former Wyoming deputy came through that area, Butch and Sundance's seclusion was compromised, and they resumed robbing trains and payrolls until Cassidys' supposed death in 1908. It was thought that both Cassidy and the kid were killed in a shootout while robbing a payroll in South America. But evidence to support this is inconclusive. Supposedly, Cassidy returned to the U.S., changed his name, and married in 1908. Butch Cassidy apparently died on July 20th, 1937. It's said that he never killed anyone. He wasn't necessarily a bad guy. He just did things that weren't acceptable by society's standards. He probably enjoyed the adrenaline rush of the well-planned robberies and the equally well-planned escapes. And it's likely that he felt he was a do-gooder, setting things right, as when he distributed the money to the truly needy. Whether portrayed as villain or hero, Butch Cassidy will live for eternity in history books, one of the most famous Wild West outlaws who ever lived. As for the others, Ben Kilpatrick was killed along with his partner Ole Hobeck in March of 1912, while attempting to rob a train near Sanderson, Texas. This is a picture of the two dead men, their bodies held up for the photo. News Carver was shot and killed in a bakery in 1901 after robbing a couple of trains. After a botched holdup in 1897, Bob Meeks was apprehended and sentenced to 35 years in prison. In 1901, his sentence was reduced to 12 years. Meeks attempted to escape from prison a couple of times, but was always caught. His mental and physical faculties began to decline, and he was eventually committed to an asylum where he attempted suicide 3 times and later escaped to live a few years with relatives before spending the rest of his days back in the asylum before dying at age 43 in 1912. In June of 1904, Kid Curry was tracked down by a posse after robbing a train in Colorado. Wounded in a shootout, Curry turned his gun on himself to avoid capture. Rumor was that Curry wasn't the one killed, and that he actually escaped to South America to join Butch and Sundance. I visited Curry's grave in Glenwood Springs not long ago, in Colorado. In August of 1899, Elzie Lay was cornered and captured in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and convicted of robbing a train and killing a sheriff and deputy in a shootout. After spending several years in prison, Lay mediated a hostage situation and a takeover by the prisoners, and Lay was later pardoned. He gave up crime, married, and had a son and daughter, and worked as a supervisor on a canal project in Southern California. The Sundance Kid is said to have returned to the U.S. after changing his name, and is thought to have lived in Utah until his death in 1936. If you come for a visit, envision how wild this region once was, and how life must have been. Spend a little time here enjoy the cool shade of the trees, and have a picnic. And you can thank Fred Hayes, who was instrumental in procuring funds for the restoration and preservation of this site. So if you'd like to come down here and check this place out, it's only about 5 miles south of Circleville, Utah, along Highway 89. I hope you enjoyed having a look at Butch Cassidy's boyhood home. Don't forget to give me a like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Rockhopper. I'll see ya.